1 Samuel 8. We're going to study the whole chapter, but let's begin by reading at verse 4. And then when we start our study, we're actually going to back up into chapter 7. So anyway, 1 Samuel 8, 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." So Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Heed the voice of the people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." Father, thank you for your word. We pray your blessing on our study, that we would understand it, believe it, be changed by it, know you better because of it, and draw close to you. And we pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated. So the last couple of verses of chapter 7 fit better in chapter 8. It says in chapter 7, and really chapter 7 verse 15 is where we're going to start. And it's an awesome verse, really. It's an awesome, simple, awesome statement. It says, "And Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life." And Samuel was a prophet. We know that from our study. He judged Israel. The job of a judge is to settle issues among parties or people. And for Samuel, he did that for the people of Israel. And judgment for them was made according to the Word of God and according to the will of God. And so he pointed people and decided things based on God's will and God's word about what was good and right. And that's not an easy job, because it requires both that he would have to give instruction and correction, that he would have to give encouragement and rebuke. And because of that, built into that is the fact that some people are going to like what you say, and some people are not going to like what you say. So it's not a real easy job. And so, but Samuel executed this ministry of judge and prophet very faithfully. His whole career, no scandals, no backsliding, no corruption, nothing like that at all. His entire life, he was committed to this ministry, to serving God, to serving the people of God. And he did it day after day, week after week, year after year. What's interesting a lot of times when we read the people in the Bible is that, these are Bible heroes. These are people that were, given an example for. And we get highlights of what they did, but, we read about Samuel in like 8 or 9 chapters in the Bible, and that's a very short amount for an entire life. And so for a good part of his life, he just faithfully, without a bunch of fanfare or show or anything else, just served the Lord. And so he's a good example of long-term faithfulness in walking with the Lord and serving the Lord. And so verse 16 of chapter 7 says, "He went from year to year on a circuit to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and judged Israel in all those places. But he always returned to Ramah, for his home was there. There he judged Israel, and there he built an altar to the Lord." So these couple of verses kind of summarize what the gist of his ministry was like, the day-to-day kind of stuff, and the faithfulness that he gave to it. First, notice that it wasn't an office job. It wasn't like he sat at a bench like the judges today. Like, he went out on a circuit. He went around and kind of made the rounds, as it were, to the different places and towns. And he didn't go to every single place, but he went to the bigger towns. And so, if there were issues that people needed, they'd go see him. And so he made the rounds to the people that he was responsible ministering to. And then verse 17 tells us that he always returned to Ramah. And the obvious reason is said there is that was his home. His home was there. That's where his home was. That was his home. That's the home he was born in. That was the town that his parents, he didn't grow up in his parents' house very long. We know that. He was raised in the tabernacle under Eli, but his parents did live there. And then we know from this chapter 8 that he had a family. We know he has a couple of sons, and his own home was there as well. And so that's where he made his home base for ministry. And not least of all, it says that he also built an altar to the Lord there, a place of worship. Now remember, at this period of time, there's no centralized place for worship, because the Shiloh, where the tabernacle was, got destroyed, and the ark is in I can't remember, is it Kirjath Jearim? I don't remember. It's one of those towns, one of the chapters we read earlier. But he so he wanted to make sure there was a place to worship, and first and foremost for himself, but also for the people. So he wasn't only a minister; it wasn't just his job; it was his life. He had a place. He was a worshiper of God, and so these things, these simple things, show the daily and regular faithfulness of Samuel. He was faithful to God. He was faithful to the people he had to minister to, and he was faithful to his family. And that might not seem like anything special, but it's huge. That is huge, because these small and routine actions and activities are what makes up a long-term life of faithfulness. You can't have long-term faithfulness without having daily faithfulness. In fact, that's what long-term faithfulness is. It's a long-term series of being faithful in little things, day by day, week by week, and year by year. And so this regular, persistent faithfulness toward God in the small daily things of life. That's what Samuel did. And Samuel had a faithful spiritual life. He had an altar. He had worship in his life. He was faithful in his service to the people. He made sure he went to them, and he was faithful to his family. And his family didn't take a backseat to his work or or to anything. Even though he had all this other stuff to do, and he had to get on the road, and he had work hours, and he had all these other things, it didn't mean that, I don't have enough time to worship. I don't have enough time for his family. He made time for it. He made sure that there was. So he was faithful in all of it. Now, that doesn't mean it was easy. That doesn't mean that, this was just simple for him. None of these things happened accidentally in Samuel's life. Those kind of things don't happen accidentally. None of that stuff happens accidentally. None of that stuff happens without attention given to it. He had to purposefully choose to be faithful every day. He had to purposely choose to keep doing his ministry every day. He had to purposely choose to make sure he was still worshiping God and still being there for his family. But he did. He did. And he had a good balance because he was faithful in all of them. And so for us too, it's no different. Long-term faithfulness to family, to our service to God, and to God himself, just in our relationship with him, it happens when we do it on purpose. It doesn't just happen. Our life, you know how weeds just happen, but the garden doesn't? The garden doesn't just happen. The weeds just happen. And that's how our lives are. The bad junk's going to pop up all by itself, but the good stuff takes attention. And so if we're going to have that, if we determine it. This is the way I'm going to live. This is the walk I'm going to have. This is the life I'm going to. This is the commitment I'm going to make to God. This is the way I'm going to be connected to him and serve him in whatever he puts before me. And this is the commitment I'm going to make to my family. This is my family. And whether it be your natural family or your spiritual family, both need commitments. And so commitment to whatever it is. And then if I do fail or slack, because we all do, I'm not going to just throw in the towel. Because I'm serving a God who has all kinds of grace, I'll get up and go again. And so faithful service to God, it takes that kind of purposefulness. Samuel is a hero of long-term faithfulness because he did it on purpose. It didn't happen to him. And so, verse 1 of chapter 8. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, the name of his second Abijah, They were judges in Beersheba, so that was one of the towns in Israel. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. So here's Samuel. He's faithful. He has a faithful life in ministry and family. But that didn't mean that his life was without problems. That didn't mean that there weren't issues going on around him. There was difficulty in his life, and there was even potentially error in his own ministry. And being faithful doesn't mean those things aren't going to be there. Being faithful doesn't mean that you're perfect. If it did, no one would ever be able to die and go to heaven and hear the words that Jesus wants to say to us, well done, good and faithful service. Every servant of God has issues, has challenges, has junk around him. Now, what were Samuel's? It revolved around his kids. It revolved around his two sons, Joel and Abijah. The first thing we're told about them is these two boys didn't walk in his ways. And worse than that, it gives some description of just how bad it was. These guys were money-grubbing, bribe-taking guys whose judgment could be bought. And that's bad for anyone, but these guys their job was to be a judge. I mean, it's bad enough if you can bribe a person, just a typical, but to be able to bribe a judge, that's bad. But here's what's interesting. It's noteworthy that the Bible never says, or God never blames Samuel for this. And why that's interesting is because sometimes God does blame the parents in the Word of God. We know that Eli, the priest, the one who raised Samuel, he had a couple of knuckleheaded sons. These guys, they were corrupt, and God did make it clear that Eli did hold some responsibility for that he was, he had a part in it. But God never blames or never rebukes Samuel for his sons. But that doesn't mean they weren't a problem. That doesn't mean they weren't bad. Samuel's sons were a problem. So what's that mean? It means this faithful servant of God had an imperfect family. His family was not perfect. It wasn't even close. Here's a faithful guy. And we're not trying to say that Samuel never sinned. The only person who never sinned was Jesus. Samuel was a sinner just like everybody else. But he was faithful, and he followed the Lord his whole life. And yet this godly man raised some kids who didn't live a godly life. And it just reminds us there's no such thing as a perfect parent who raises perfect kids. There are many good, godly Christian parents whose kids, like Samuel, do not end up walking in their ways. It's heartbreaking, especially if you're really following God. It's heartbreaking. And it's just the way of life too. There's many kids who go, good or bad, really. It can go both ways. Kids who don't follow in the way of their parents. They go contrary to how they were raised. Some bad parents end up having kids that get saved and go well beyond their parents ever did. That's awesome when that happens. Praise God for that. Maybe they'll even be responsible for leading their family to the Lord. But it's also true that some kids raised in godly homes walk away from it. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. But there's so many examples of it in the Bible. The family line of the kings of Judah has examples of this throughout the history. You got a good king who has a bad son who becomes king. Then you have a bad king who has a son who becomes good and becomes king, and you have all that. David's a good example here because David was a godly man who sinned terribly himself, and he ended up having some kids who were godly and some kids who were not godly. He had both. Jesus himself can be considered here. Jesus had at least 12 spiritual sons that he raised, the disciples, and one of them went all bad. And so we do the best we can to raise our kids in the Lord. We will fail. We will not be perfect at it by any means. But the bottom line is every single individual person, whether they're raised by godly parents or not, has their own decision whether they're going to walk with the Lord or not, particularly the ones that are raised knowing the truth. They have all that they need to know, but they still have to make their decisions. Parents can do wrong and fail, but kids can do wrong and fail too. And so now, so that's the first part of the issues going on in Samuel's life. And then the other part is, it is possible that Samuel could have erred too, as it relates to this. And that would be in letting those sons of his serve in ministry. We don't know if he let them serve as judges out of negligence or ignorance. We don't know. It doesn't say. Whether or not he knew his sons' actions and how they were beforehand, before in the chapter we're going to find out the elders come and let him know. We don't know if he already knew that or not. It doesn't say. And either way, though, it could be argued. If you wanted to, you could argue he either should have known or he should have acted if he did know, and we don't know. And so, but even in this, God didn't rebuke Samuel. He didn't. God didn't go, hey, Samuel, you're really blowing it here. And again, that solidifies the point that this faithful and godly man is not by any means perfect. And you can you can know people who are faithful, and we should never expect faithfulness to mean perfection. We should never be shocked when we happen to find out that somebody we see who lives a faithful life, oh man, what did they do? Now, if it's really bad, yeah, it's gonna be hurtful. It's gonna be hard to deal with. It's gonna be shocking. It's gonna cause a lot of disruption. But we shouldn't be shocked just at the small little, or just the common, oh man, did you hear what he said? He's a pastor. He said that, oh gosh. Or, or something like that. We shouldn't be shocked when we find out, oh man, you mean all his kids aren't in ministry too? Or these types of things. It's a terrible thing to think that just because someone themselves is faithfully walking with God, that means everything surrounding them is going to be too. People mistakenly do that, and then they put someone on a pedestal, and that's a bad deal, because you put someone on a pedestal and it's going to fall. It's going to fall. And you're going to find out sooner or later, probably sooner, that they don't deserve to be on a pedestal. Nobody does. And so don't expect anyone to have, even if they're faithful, don't expect anyone to have a perfect life, perfect kids, a perfect family. Faithfulness does not equal perfection at all. And every single person needs prayer. You see someone's faithful, they still need prayer. They still need prayer. So that's what was going on with Samuel. And then verse 4, it says, then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, look, you're old, and your sons don't walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So we've mentioned a whole bunch of times how this is a period of transition from judges to king. This is it. We're like right on it. In the long years of Samuel's service, remember, he's been doing this for years. Of course, he gets old. Everybody gets old, unless you don't. And then the people noticed that, man, Samuel's getting kind of old. Doesn't walk as fast, these types of things. And his sons, those sons of his. And so they noticed these things, and the elders of the nation, they come to Samuel to where he lives in Ramah, and they have two complaints. They also have a solution. And so the complaints, of course, they're about his age and about his sons. You're getting old, man. You're getting old. And your sons, man, they're not like you. And according to the text, both of those are true. It said it first, and then it says they came to him and talked to him about it. He was old, and his sons were not like him. They weren't like him. And but they also added this solution in there. So they have the two real issues. You're getting old, your sons aren't good, and they took those two complaints as an opportunity. Since you're old, and since your kids are not like you, rather than having them replace you in your old age, I know they're already kind of on the job, but instead of having them replace you in your old age or in your death, we figure this is a good time for you to make a king for us. We want a king. And it's the perfect time to kind of line up with the rest of the world, sort of get in line with the times, have a king can be our judge. That's what everybody else does, and we want to do that too. And so that's the conversation that they brought to Samuel. But it says, verse 6, but the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And so Samuel prayed to the Lord. So they came to him, this is what they say, and Samuel's not happy about what he heard. But it's not everything. It's not all of it. It doesn't say at all that he was bothered in any way for them saying you're old. It doesn't say he's bothered in any way about them calling out his sons. You know, we definitely live in a time of hyper offensiveness. Hyper offensiveness. Hyper offensiveness. People are so easily offended. Jesus said in Matthew 24, that's one of the signs of the end times. It's one of the signs of when he's going to come back, that people are offended by everything. And many are easily offended by any criticism, whether it's even if it's true, even if it's 100% true. People get, pretty bent out of shape a lot of times. And Samuel could have been offended by this. It's pretty personal, right? I mean, okay, I'm old. That's you trying to force me into early retirement or something. Okay, I'm old. I'm not the first person that's ever gotten old. And he could have easily said, my kids, hey, my kids are none of your business. You mind your own kids, mind your own business. He could have said all that. But the thing is, they were valid concerns. It's not offensive to say you're getting old. We have to think about the future, what's going to happen next. That's wise. And if someone's kids are messing up, somebody has to say something. If the parents aren't noticing it, somebody's got to speak up. And so Samuel's not going to be around forever. They need to know what to do. And so it wasn't wrong for them to bring these things up to Samuel. And he listened to them about these things without complaining, without getting all, hurt feelings and upset and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is again, I said we live in a time of offensiveness, and it's sad because many people wouldn't listen to either one of those things, no matter how valid they were. Some people are just not open. Now, nobody likes criticism. I'll put that out there. It's not like anybody's excited when someone comes to you and has to. I don't know anyone that's ever been excited about that. None of us like it. But we have to know it needs to happen from time to time. And so, but some people will never be open to it. There's no criticism that can be laid or any ideas. And particularly, if it's my kids, you don't talk about my kids ever. And we understand that, our parents defend our kids, but we have to be open to this kind of thing. Now, the balance there is we're not trying to say, anytime you see anything wrong with anyone else's kid, you don't have to bring up every issue. And that's not a good time. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes people in ministry get attacked even harsher because there's this false idea that, you're this or you're that, you're an elder, you're a pastor, you're a leader, so how come your kids aren't perfect? And that's just wrong thinking. That's not okay to pick on someone just because of their position. But the fact is, we ought to be able to hear concerns about problems or potential problems, about what's coming down the pipe, about what might be going on, and if they're seen or if they're known about, they should be able to be addressed. And Samuel examples maturity here in being open to hearing about those things. But then the elders also had the solution. They had so they know the issue, but they also are ready to tell him what he's supposed to do. And that's where it gets a little bit more sticky because, okay, I'm ready to hear you. But then sometimes people feel really free to tell you exactly what you're supposed to do about it, right? Hey, your kid's doing this. You know what you need to do, and that kind of stuff. But they have a solution here. And their solution is wrong. And that's where Samuel did object. He didn't object to the concerns. He objected to their solution. Since you're old and your kids are bad, we want a king. We want a king. And that's this is what Samuel wasn't happy about. Now, why? Why was Samuel bothered by that part of it? Well, it would have been easy for Samuel to, it would have been easy if he, sometimes people respond, okay, that's the solution. Well, okay, the times I guess the times are kind of changing and we need to keep up. And so, yeah, we're the only ones around that don't seem to have a king, and we need to line up because that's what seems like the right thing to do. And, you got to make adjustments in life and that kind of stuff. And here's the thing about asking for a king. In and of itself, them asking for a king was not all bad. God actually anticipated them wanting a king and intended to give them one. How do we know that? In Genesis 17 and 35, chapter 17 and chapter 35, the Lord told both Abraham and Jacob that someday kings would come from this nation. So God anticipated this period of time. Jacob prophesied that Judah would be the kingly tribe of this nation in Genesis 49. And then when the law was given through Moses, which was close to 1,000 years before this, like 700 or 800 years before this, God gave instructions to the nation about how a king was going to work in their nation. So it's not just the king and all by itself kind of thing is bad. God anticipated, intended to happen at some point. The problem was their motive. The problem was what they thought they could get out of a king. The problem was what they thought the king would accomplish for them. Why they wanted a king, what they wanted the king to be. That was the problem. Give us a king to judge us like the nations. We want a king so that we can be like the rest of the world. We want our nation to be comparative to all the other nations. We look dumb because we don't have a king. We're like outcasts. People look at us like we're weird because we don't do it like they do it. And that's what bothered Samuel. And here's why. They were supposed to be a holy nation. They were supposed to be set apart. They were supposed to be different than everybody else and distinct. Not like the nations at all, but better, higher, separate, godly, not worldly. That's what they were supposed to be. That was God's whole thing. Hey, I want to be your God. You're going to be my people, and you're going to be better. You're going to be different, really different than everybody else. And here's the law. Here's all the things that I want you to commit to that will make you different and make people wonder because, wow, they really are blessed. Why? Well, because they're different. They belong to somebody else. And so here they are coming along going, we want to be like everybody else. How frustrating for a spiritual leader who's he's leading these people spiritually, longing for them to grow and mature in the Lord. This is what this is. We could liken it to this. They are basically, it's like if a church gathered together, they had a congregational meeting, they went up to the pastor and they said, hey, we have this really good idea of how we can be even more worldly than we are so far. Because we're really different and people think we're weird and we don't like that. So we have great ideas of all the ways we can look exactly like the world and be just like them. And so that's what they're doing. And his frustration is extremely warranted because, again, we aren't supposed to be worldly. We're supposed to be godly. What are you thinking about? And so it's true that as much as they were supposed to be holy people and different, all the more so for us as the people of God who are believers in Jesus today, that we aren't supposed to be like the world either. And we don't need to be like the world. Why would we need to be like the world? We have it better than what the world. We have God. We have Him in us and among us. We have His presence. We have His power. We have His word. We have His wisdom. We have His Spirit. and we have his love. Why on earth would we feel like we're missing out because we don't have what the world has? And it's sad because there's a lot of Christians that do think like that. There's a lot of churches that think that way. They don't see the greatness of being the special, different, peculiar, the Bible says peculiar, people of God. And so they want what the world offers. And like Israel, rather than seeing the great blessing, man, it's awesome that we're different. They feel, so many times people feel like they're missing out. Oh, I know I got to follow God, but I miss out. I don't want to miss out. Man, and so many churches, when they see that and feel that, they try to accommodate it. And what a horrible mistake. Yeah, let's be like the world. And what a mistake. God said, no, be holy. Be holy. I'm holy. And you're my people. I want you to be holy. And then as it relates to the faithfulness of Samuel in all this, he heard all their concerns. He was willing to listen to them, but then he responded appropriately. Again, in the first part, he didn't make an undue overreaction toward the parts that were personal towards him if they had some validity. He responded appropriately there. But then on this part, this other part about the king, this truly is wrong, and he didn't ignore that either. He didn't go, oh, well, they've always liked me, you know, everybody's always listened to me, and I don't want them to not listen to me anymore. I still want everybody to really like me. In fact, if I go against them now, they might just oust me immediately. He didn't do any of that. He still responded appropriately, faced with this knuckleheaded desire of the nation. He's like, this is a big deal. These people really don't get it. And so it says he prayed to the Lord. And if we're going to be faithful in the long term, one of the things that means is we need to learn how to pay attention to people, listen to their concerns, and be able to distinguish which concerns are good and valid and right concerns and which ones are just them being plain wrong. And then responding with grace, but also with truth. And so let God, not the times, not what everybody wants, not how culture's going, but let God determine how I'm going to respond. Are these people right or are they wrong? And go with that. The end of verse 6 again says, so Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they've rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, which they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them. So Samuel prayed about it. He talked to God about it. God gave him some insight, some discernment about things. And God's answer to Samuel reveals another part of the concern that we didn't see before, but there was probably some element of hurt in Samuel here. You know, and I mean, if you pour into anybody, you would be able to relate to that. Here you are, you're pouring into people, trying to love them, trying to lead them in a good way, and then either they don't respond correctly or they respond wrong altogether. That's hard. That's a hard thing to deal with. The Apostle Paul knew about this in 2 Corinthians 12:15. He said, the more I love you, the less I'm loved. That's painful. And so God makes it clear to Samuel, look, they haven't rejected you. That's not what's happening here. They're rejecting me. In other words, it's not that they don't like you as judge. It's actually way worse than that. They don't like me ruling over them as their God. And then God goes on to say, they're only treating you the way that they have always treated me. You're finally feeling how I feel all the time. This is how they've always been to me. That's a sad commentary on what it is to be a sinner and to be a believer, because we do that a lot. And it's also helpful to remember that as we want to pour into people, as we want to witness to people and minister to other people, and we try to point people in the right way. We try to encourage people in Jesus. We try to, help people to go, man, don't just jump into things. Pray about it and read the word, and here's what God says, and consider this. And we do all those types of things, and we try to do that. And sometimes people don't want to hear that at all. They don't want to hear it. And sometimes they'll act like they're listening. They'll be like the son that said, I go, sir, but then he doesn't go, that Jesus told about. But sometimes people are more blunt than that and more direct than that. They don't try to act like, they just straight up shoot you down. And they just directly reject you. And it can be very tempting to take that personally, to have your feelings hurt about that. And God would say the same thing to us that he said to Samuel here. Listen, if you're telling them the truth, if you're telling them and you're pointing them in the right direction, according to the word of God, according to my will, you don't need to take that personally. They are not rejecting you. It's worse than that. But you don't need to take it personally. Jesus said, hey, if they hate you, don't forget, they hated me first. And anyway, then after explaining to Samuel, God wanted Samuel to understand what this was really all about. Then God tells Samuel how he's supposed to respond to them. As my prophet, as my representative, I want you to heed them and give them what they want. But before you do, you give them a clear warning about what it is that they're going into. You give them a clear warning. One of the most sobering, and it'd be helpful if it was scary to each one of us, things about what God can do with us sometimes, is that God can take a willful person and say, fine, have it your way. One of the reasons why when Jesus taught, his disciples said, hey, teach us to pray like John's disciples taught him. One of the things in that prayer he said is, your kingdom come, your will be done. He felt like that was an important part of our prayer life, because we're so prone to going, no, I want my way. Romans 1 tells us that one of God's expressions of wrath against sin is to say, fine, have it your way. God has given us free will. And one of the great ways that he will discipline and correct and lead us is to let our free will have its way. He lets us make our own choices. He loves us. He gives us warnings. He guides and makes us, he wrote in our hearts what right and wrong is, and then he gave us his word, and then he gives us people around us to do all these things. But sometimes he'll just let us go our own way and experience it because we're so determined to do it anyway that nothing else is going to get through to us. And here's another point of the faithfulness of Samuel. They wanted him out. They wanted something else. And in that position, it would be really understandable if somebody would want to quit. I've been serving these guys. I think it is time for me to retire. These people don't listen to me anyway. What's the use? These people don't appreciate what I'm trying to do. They don't listen to what I'm trying to say. I'm done. He could have done that. But he didn't. He prayed. What do you want me to do now, God? Moses exampled that really well too. Moses went to God and went, your people over here, your people, and legitimately so, they really are God's people. And God gave him wisdom on how to deal with it. And this is a wisdom that could have only come from God. I think the natural reaction would never be to let people go in a bad direction. I'd be like, let's beat them up first. Let's tie them up, put them in a closet, let them think about it for a really long time, and then, learn their lesson. No, don't let them have their way. No way, man. But this is what God knows what to do. He knows how to deal with people. And in life, if we're going to encounter people not acting right, not responding well, not walking in the wisdom that comes from God, long-term faithfulness is going to require that sometimes we're going to have to pray God and then kind of take a hands-off approach. That's kind of what Samuel's doing. I mean, he's just telling them. But then he's like, God's going to have to deal with you now. we tell our kids as they're getting older, we're their parents, we're their authority, but as they get older, there's a point when we're not their authority so much anymore. We're still counsel, we still love them, but at some point, we don't spank them anymore. We're not, grounding them. It's them and God. And God loves them more, but he's also way more strict than we ever have been. And so he gives wisdom if we want wisdom to how do we deal with this when we encounter people like that. Verse 10 says, so Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And he said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s, will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. And he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. And he will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Wow. So God wanted Samuel to warn them about what they were really asking for. Clearly, they did not know what they were really asking for. And so God tells Samuel, I want you to make it as clear as possible what they're getting themselves into here. Tell them what it's really going to be like. They are clueless. They think it's like this. One of the things we do when we do pre-marriage counseling is we try to help people forget every fairy tale rom-com movie they've ever seen and tell them what marriage is really like. Not to scare them out of it, but to prepare them. Because often young people have a wrong idea of what, it's just going to be romance every day. Every day when he comes home from work, he's going to sweep me off my feet and all this kind of stuff. And we're all laughing, right, who've been married for half a second and all that kind of stuff. And so, but they tell them what's going on when they have a man ruling over them as king, because they don't know. And how often that's true of us as sinners. We think we want something. We think that if God would just do this and give me this, and he's like, you don't even know what you're talking about. Picture some little kid. Here's the best way I think of it. A little kid, Mommy, I want ice cream for dinner. No, you can't have ice cream but ice cream's good. In fact, I want you to give me ice cream for dinner every day. Those vegetables are nasty. Give me ice cream. And you can't even explain it. All you can say is, no, it's not good. You can have ice cream once in a while, but you're not having it for dinner. No, you don't know what you're asking for. And God is gracious. And so he had Samuel spell it out for him. Here's what having a king like the nations is going to mean. You think it's a good idea, but it's all wrong. It's wrong. You are wrong. We are wrong so often. He's going to draft your sons into every kind of service for his benefit, not yours. He's going to take your daughters and put them to work doing things that don't benefit you in any way, only him. He's going to take your property and the things that you own and your livelihood and make them someone else's. He's going to take your income and he's going to pay his servants. You're not going to get servants. He's going to get servants from your money. And does it sound familiar to anybody? Say? And public servants, right? Public servants. That's a joke. Don't get me started. He's going to take your resources and he's going to use them for himself. He's even going to take you. He's going to put you under obligation to his service. Take. I'm sure you noticed it as we were reading how many times it said take for himself. And in other words, this is not going to pay the way you think it's going to pay. It's actually going to cost. This is not a benefit. This is a cost. It's a bad idea in so many ways. You want a king like the nations? They aren't givers, they're takers. And how completely opposite of God, right? God is a giver. He so loved the world that he gave his son. He gives. People take. God gives. We used to have yard sales all the time. We've had so many over the years. And you find out quickly how takey people are. Like you're selling the cheapest thing for such a good deal. Like a TV for like $5 or whatever. And they're like, I'll take it for a quarter, and people just take. You got some nice, tool or something that if they brought it even at a thrift store, it would be like $100, but you're selling it for $50 and they want it for like $5 or something. Like that's how people are. People take. And God's trying to tell his people, people are like that. That's what you're like. You're a taker. Well, your king, the one you're saying you want a king like everybody else has, he's gonna take and he's gonna be the same as you, but he's gonna have all authority and resource to do it. He's gonna take from you. And you don't like how you don't you get that? I've always been giving to you, and you're saying, no, I'd rather be taken from. God didn't spare his own son. He gave him for us all. And how with him will he not also give us freely all things? And then even more generally, living according to the world is a losing deal. That's how you take this principle and apply it. We think, oh man, sometimes I feel like I miss out because I'm following God. You're not missing out on anything at all. The world's way costs way too much. God gives exceedingly abundantly above all we ask. Or the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus came to give life more abundantly. And then he said, tell him that warning. And so he tells him the warning. And then he tells him, and when you finally realize that God's right, because you will, God will make sure that we will realize he's right if we don't realize it now. That's why he lets them go through it and he lets us go through it sometimes. And he says, when you realize it, you're going to be sorry. You're going to start crying to God. And it says he won't answer you because you asked for this. Does that mean God is saying, I'm not going to be gracious to you anymore? No. He's saying, you didn't listen to my warning from my word through my spirit-filled representative who I sent to you. So the only way you're really going to get this is to really feel how bad it is. You know the old saying, you made your bed, you got to lie in it now. God's saying this is going to be big. That's why I'm warning you so strongly right now. And it's going to be too big to just undo. You're going to have to go through it to learn. So he told them all that. And so Samuel was giving them a loving but very firm and truthful warning. And those are always good. Man, if somebody tries to warn us, consider the fact that it's not easy to warn somebody, first of all. Consider the fact that, put yourself in someone else. You have to go warn somebody. Some people like doing that and they're good at it, but most of us are just like, I know I have to say something. I don't want to, but I have to. Consider the fact that difficulty, the fact that they went ahead and did it anyway, must mean something, and just listen to them. Think about what they're saying. Why are they telling me this? And then they say something, and then they say something to you like, man, if you keep going in this direction, it's not going to be good. If you keep acting like this, you don't want what's going to happen. And to be faithful often means that we have to do that. We have to do that. Samuel would not have been a long-term faithful servant if he backed off when it was time to warn. He had to do it. Verse 19, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, no, but we will have a king over us. In other words, they're basically saying, if you don't do it, we're going to have one anyway. That's how determined they were. They didn't want God's will. They truly were just saying, we're just going to do this. They're trying to get God's blessing on their idea. That's always bad. That's why Jesus said, your will be done. Not, hey, God, here's what we're doing. Will you bless it? And that's what they're doing. And so, no, we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. We're willing to pay the price because we know it's just going to help us out so much. I know it's not supposed to be like that, and we're not supposed to do it, but I'm telling you, it's going to work. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. And so the Lord said to Samuel, heed their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his city. So after all that warning from a godly man, they still insisted on their way. I imagine this had to have been one of the most difficult days in Samuel's ministry life, because he did care about these people, and no leader wants the people that they're leading to make such bad decisions. But it happens. Sometimes no amount of pleading, no amount of reasoning changes them. And that's what happened that day. And this is from the man that led them for years. Everyone in the nation unanimously recognized him as a representative and a prophet. Everyone did. Remember when it first started, the summary at the beginning of his ministry life says, God didn't let any of his words fall to the ground. The whole nation recognized him as a prophet. And he gave a faithful and detailed warning, but they just didn't care. They didn't want to listen to it. And they repeated this foolish demand with even more foolish motive. We want to be like the world. Having a king like everybody else is going to solve all our problems. He'll be able to win our wars for us. And we've been beat too many times lately. We need some strong and forgetting that it wasn't because of that. It was because of their sinfulness. And so Samuel, once again, he tells them all this. And then he goes back to God and said, yeah, I told them, and they still want a king. And again, the same temptation probably would be there, like, I guess I'm just done. I'll be done. Or to get defensive, or to get hurt, or to get angry, or all that stuff. But he didn't, because he was faithful, and he was faithful even when they weren't. And that's another thing about long-term faithfulness. We should never be shocked. And the fact of the matter is, there's going to be people around us, and it might even be a whole big group or a whole crowd, that they're all going the wrong way. And long-term faithfulness means that we have to be ready to go like Joshua. You have to decide, if you guys, when they crossed over, he told the nation, you guys decide, when we go into this land, are you going to serve the gods of the people that are there, or the ones that we came with from Egypt? You have to decide, or God. You have to decide. And then he said, I've already decided. Me and my house, we're serving the Lord. And that's what Samuel is in effect doing. All right, you're going to get what you want. You're going to get what you want. And God's going to deal with you now. And so he lets them go in the way that they choose. And then Samuel leaves the results to God. And so Samuel told them, everyone go to his city. Go home. You're all going to get what you want. All your dreams about the king, and why won't God let me have this? And he's going to give it to you now. Go home. Go home. And God offers every sinner a better way to trust him, to walk with him. It requires a repentance of sins. It requires a turning from a life of going after what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I want to experience things. And he calls us and says, I got a better life for you. And to trust my son, to make him Lord, to follow him, believe him. And every single person has a decision our way or his way. I'm Lord or Jesus is Lord. I'm king of myself or Jesus is king of my life. And you know, I'm going to live a life that honors God, or I'm going to live a life that makes the world proud. And if that's what we want, he will send you away. All right, go ahead. Go have it. Go home. Enjoy. Have at it. Not because he is excited. He doesn't want that. It's hard. It breaks his heart. He wants to save you. He wants to save every person. But because if we're that stubborn in the head, he knows that's the only way. Go feel the pain. God does tough love, but he still loves. If you're tired of doing it your own way, and you haven't received Jesus as Lord, you haven't turned from your own way yet, know that at this moment, he is inviting you to come with him, that he would be your Lord, that you would be his, he would be yours. And if you put your faith in Jesus, that you believe that he died for your sins, and you can be forgiven, and he rose again, if you trust him and commit, he's going to be my God. That's the life I'm going to live now. You'll be saved right now and forever. The Holy Spirit will come inside of your life. He'll never leave. He'll start guiding you and blessing you and pointing you to Jesus, and it won't be easy all the time, but when you die, you'll go to heaven forever. And you can decide to do that right now. The invitation is open at this moment. Just turn from your own way and go, Jesus, be king of my life. I'm going to pray. While I'm praying, I'm going to pray a prayer that reflects somebody who's saying, yes, that's what I want. And if you're somebody that wants to do that, you want to receive Jesus as Lord, you want him to come into your life, you want to be a follower of Jesus, then as I'm praying, make that your prayer. Say the same thing to God, and he'll answer. Let's pray. Father, thank you that though we're sinners and willful and selfish, you offer us something so much better. And Lord, I pray for and with anyone who for the very first time wants to tell you that, come into my life, so that they would say it right now. Lord, I'm a sinner, come into my life. I confess my sin, I want to turn from it, and I want to follow you. I believe Jesus died. I choose to believe that he died for my sins and rose again. So fill me with your Spirit and help me to follow you. And Lord, just for the rest of us, we want to have a long life of serving you and being faithful to you and hearing your Spirit and listening to correction and being faithful if no one else is. So help us, Lord. Fill us, strengthen us, be glorified in our lives. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.